You know, we always hear that evolution is just this brutal, winner-take-all battle. But what if I told you there's a hidden logic, a kind of code that governs not just conflict, but cooperation too? Well, that's what we're diving into today. We're unlocking evolutionary game theory. And trust me, these rules shape everything from the animal kingdom right up to our digital world. So this whole idea brings up a really big puzzle. I mean, if it's all about survival of the fittest, then why do you see stags just locking antlers and, pushing each other around? Why don't they just go for the kill? So many fights in nature look more like some kind of ritualized dance instead of an actual brutal fight to the death. It doesn't add up, does it? It feels totally counterintuitive. And we're not the only ones who thought so. This exact question really bugged the brilliant mathematical biologist John Maynard Smith. He was looking at nature and seeing all this restraint and thinking, hang on, this just doesn't jive with Darwin's core ideas. And you know what? His search for an answer, it was about to completely change how we think about strategy itself. All right, so here's the plan. We're going to start with that big puzzle, then get into the new theory of games that cracked it wide open. We'll look at the classic hawk versus dove game, see how this stuff applies to, believe it or not, lizards and cybersecurity, and then we'll tackle the ultimate game, how cooperation even exists in the first place. Okay, first up, nature's strategic puzzle. The whole idea we're taught is that evolution is, well, ruthless, right? Red in tooth and claw. But then you actually go out and look at the world, and you see all this restraint, all these rituals, even things that look like genuine kindness. So the big question is, how on earth could that stuff evolve if it's always the most selfish individuals who are supposed to win? So the first guess people had was this idea of group selection. You know, the thinking was that animals held back for the good of the species. It's a nice thought, but it just doesn't work. See, Darwin's whole theory is built on what's best for the individual. Think about it. Any individual that decides to cheat, to fight dirty while everyone else is playing nice, that's the one who's going to win, have more kids, and pass on those selfish genes. So that whole good of the species idea, it just falls apart under scrutiny. The real breakthrough, the game changer, came when Maynard Smith looked outside of biology and borrowed a tool from economics, of all places, game theory. He had this incredible insight that evolution is a game, just a game with totally different rules than the ones economists were studying. And this new way of looking at things, that became evolutionary game theory. So what makes this evolutionary game theory so different? Well, a few really key things. First off, the strategies we're talking about aren't conscious decisions. They're genetically inherited traits, like a built-in tendency to be aggressive or more passive. Second, the players don't need to be geniuses or even rational. Evolution is the one doing the thinking, just by testing what works over millions of years. And maybe the biggest difference, the prize, the payoff, it isn't money, it's fitness. It's all about surviving and passing on your genes. And that brings us to probably the most famous, most classic model in this whole field, hawk versus dove. It's just a brilliantly simple game, but man, it solves that big puzzle we started with. Why animals have these ritualized fights so elegantly. Okay, let's meet our players. First, you've got the hawk. The hawk is an all-out aggressor. It always escalates to a fight, and it doesn't stop until it's either won or it's badly hurt. Then you've got the dove. The dove is way more cautious. It'll puff up its chest and put on a big show, but the second things get real, the dove bails. It would rather retreat than risk getting seriously injured. So let's play this out. We'll call the value of the resource, the prize, V, and the cost of getting hurt, C. Okay? So if a hawk runs into a dove, that's easy. The hawk wins, no contest, and gets the whole prize, V. If two doves meet, they just kind of posture for a bit and then split it, so they each get half of V. But, and this is the really important part, what happens when two hawks go at it? Well, they fight hard. Each one has a 50-50 shot of winning V, but also a 50-50 shot of getting seriously injured, which costs them C. And that's huge, because if that cost of injury is high enough, their average payoff can actually be a negative number. They lose more than they could ever gain. And here's where it all clicks. In the real world, right, the cost of a potentially fatal injury, that's C, is almost always way bigger than the value of one meal or one chance to mate. That's V. So when C is bigger than V, a population made up of only hawks just can't last. It's not stable. Why? Because they're just injuring each other constantly. A single dove popping up in that world would do amazing. It would just run away from every fight, never get hurt, and watch the hawks tear each other apart. But, and here's the other side of the coin, a population of only doves isn't stable either. A single hawk mutant would be king. It could just bully everyone and take whatever it wanted. This whole idea leads us to the core concept of evolutionary game theory, something called an evolutionarily stable strategy, or ESS for short. So what is an ESS? You can think of it like a fortress. It's a strategy, or a mix of strategies, that's so good, so robust, that no new mutant strategy can successfully invade and take over. It's the equilibrium point. It's where evolution finally settles down and says, okay, this works. So back to our hawk-dove game, what's the ESS? It's not all hawks. It's not all doves. It's a stable mix of both strategies. The population actually settles at a very specific equilibrium, where the proportion of hawks is equal to V divided by C, the value of the prize over the cost of the fight. And what this means, which is so cool, is that the amount of aggression you see in a species isn't just random. It's the result of this deep evolutionary calculation of risk versus reward. And that is why animals have ritual combat. It's the game playing out. They're probing, posturing, playing a mixed strategy, because the cost of going all in is just way too high for everyone. Okay, but what happens when there isn't a stable point? What if a game just never settles down? Well, some games are exactly like that. They create these endless cycles of one strategy beating another on and on forever. We see it in the wild, and believe it or not, we're using the exact same logic today to understand our most advanced digital battlefields. You have got to see this real-world example. It's amazing. It's the side-blotched lizard. Okay, so there are 3 different kinds of males, and they have this perfect rock-paper-scissors thing going on. You have the super aggressive orange throats. They beat the blue throats, who are more defensive and just guard one mate. But the defensive blue throats? They can fend off the sneaky yellow throats, who actually pretend to be females to get past their guard. And then, to complete the circle, the sneaky yellow throats can outsmart the aggressive orange throats, because the orange guys can't be everywhere at once. It is literally rock, paper, scissors in lizard form. So what's the end result of this lizard game? Well, there isn't one. There's no evolutionarily stable strategy. The population just cycles forever. One year, the orange guys are on top. The next, the yellows take over. Then the blues have their day, only for the oranges to come roaring back. No single strategy ever wins for good. It's just this constant, dynamic, strategic dance. And if you're thinking, okay, lizards are cool, but what does this have to do with me? Well, think again. These exact same cycles, this same strategic dance is happening right now, constantly, on the digital battlefield. Yeah, there's even a model for this called the kernel blotto game. Picture an attacker and a defender in cyberspace. Both have a limited amount of resources, let's say computing power. And they have to decide how to spread that power out across different fronts. And what happens? You get a cycle, just like with the lizards. A big, heavy, brute force attack might smash through a simple firewall. So you build a stronger firewall. That strong firewall might stop a more subtle, stealthy attack. But then, that stealthy attack finds a way to sneak around the big defenses. It just becomes this endless arms race of moves and countermoves, with no single strategy that wins forever. Okay, for our last section, let's go back to one of the biggest puzzles Darwin ever faced. If evolution is all about self-interest, how in the world did cooperation and altruism ever come to be? You guessed it, game theory holds the key. I mean, think about what altruism really is. You're helping somebody else, even though it costs you something. You know, like a ground squirrel that shrieks an alarm call. It warns everybody else, but it basically just painted a giant target on its own back for a predator. In a purely selfish world, that should be a losing strategy, right? But what EGT shows us is that under the right set of circumstances, cooperation isn't just a nice idea, it can be an absolutely unbeatable strategy. So how does it happen? Well, EGT points to 3 main roads to cooperation. First up, you've got kin selection. Pretty simple. If you help your relatives, you're helping the genes that you share with them to survive. It's kind of like selfishness from the gene's point of view. Second, there's direct reciprocity. This is the classic, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. It works great as long as 2 individuals are going to see each other again. And then there's the third, more complex one, indirect reciprocity. This is the idea that I'll help you and somebody else will help me down the line. This is all about reputation, and it's the bedrock of our huge cooperative societies. So the big takeaway here is just how powerful this framework really is. I mean, evolutionary game theory gives us a lens to understand everything from the basic logic of selfish genes all the way up to the mind-bendingly complex dynamics of our own societies and even our global digital networks. It's like a universal language for strategy. And that really leaves us with one last thought to chew on. Our own lives, from negotiating at work to just navigating our social circles, are absolutely filled with these strategic games. Once you start looking for them, you really do see them everywhere. So that leaves a question for you. What games are you playing right now without even realizing it?